This is the video you've been waiting on. I gave you in the last video 3 reasons why Deshaun Watson would likely lose in court. A lot of y'all jumped off the porch. Oh my God, G. Bush, I thought you said that he had a shot and he had a chance. Well, if you listen to the rest of the video and you got to the end, you would know that this video is coming. And this is the one we've all been waiting for. I'm going to give you 5 reasons that if the NFL Players Association and Deshaun Watson play their cards right, they can not only win in court, but they can really take down the NFL for good. We'll explain how they do it, why they do it, and all the ins and outs on a very special episode of the Barbershop coming up next. It's your boy G. Bush back at it again. Thanks for everybody checking out the Deshaun Watson series. I didn't plan on coming up with all these series and parts and different things, but I was a little disillusioned with the coverage of the situation. I'm basically tired of talking points. The media has gone to hell in the handbasket. People don't read things. People make jokes about not reading things. People think it's funny and cute. Oh, I don't study anything. Okay, well, that's cool. But sometimes people need to have some sort of integrity about what they're reading, because everything ain't funny. At the end of the day, there's been a lot of outlets that have not covered this stuff. There's been a lot of outlets that are national, local, that have not put the time, energy, and effort to talk about what this case is involving. They wait for each other. It's an echo chamber. And what I did in my last video was to prove to you that not only do I study the stuff that is pertinent to the case, but I tell you all sides. I gave you 3 reasons why it's an uphill battle in my last video. And I do that because I'm showing you that there's levels to making sure that you understand all parts of a case so that you can completely understand it, right? That's why history is important. That's why checks and balances are important. Half of the reason we are where we are in this country is because people believe that they can skip and skirt over a process. There's no critical thinking. There's no responsibility. And people think that your opinion counts for everything. No, I know I'm an opinion host, but I'm showing you guys what it looks like when an opinion host actually does his homework. So I told you one side. I gave you the owner's side. I gave you what Roger Goodell would do, and it's played out to a T. Just tonight, the NFL Players Association has said that they are going to appeal the appeal of Roger Goodell, Harvey, who is the Attorney General out of New Jersey, former Attorney General out of New Jersey, who, by the way, this is not by a gaffe, right? This is not a random pick. Notice Sue Robinson held over the original presiding as an arbiter, right? It was specifically picked because it was allegations of sexual assault. She was a woman. So anything that she said, the league could hide behind because she was a woman in the case, and she has credibility in being a woman, a credibility in being a former judge, and having 25 years of experience. So they did what they needed to do in that case. You're going to learn throughout the way I weave this thing here is you're going to learn that the NFL does nothing by mistake. The NFL is one of the biggest syndicates in the game. I won't say crime syndicates because that's being inflammatory, and that could be like libel, or I could be slandering someone. But they are one of the biggest syndicates in the game. Nothing that they do is not calculated. Nothing that they don't do has a purpose. Everything links, everything changed. So when Sue Robinson was picked by both sides, it worked out well. Mr. Harvey has now been picked. He's an African-American gentleman who happens to be a Democrat, who happens to be an individual who's a prosecutor. So his language and his background is prosecuting cases, picking cases apart. So now he's going to be the designated arbiter to have the final say of what Deshaun Watson's penalty will be. It's not a coincidence that it's an African-American man. It's not a coincidence that he's on the council for diversity, picked by Roger Goodell. Believe make no bones about it. He is there to run interference, and I'm just going to be clear about it. He's not. The questions of, will Deshaun Watson get a fair hearing? Trust me, Roger Goodell is making this pick. We all know it. I don't need to waste any time on that. But let's get to some of the talking points that at least this video will take care of. There's two things that we're going to do here. This notion that the NFL is some shining organization, that they have some moral standing and high ground here, will be done after this video. Because I would have never gone this way if people would have given some opposition to some of the blatant, ridiculous stuff that they're saying. When Roger Goodell stands up here and says he has to protect the shield, my question is to every single media member in that room, well, Mr. Goodell, you say you want to protect the shield, but yet and still you have A, B, C, D, and E, F, G going here. Can you explain that to me? The same way you ask Deshaun Watson the same ridiculous questions every single day over and over and over again and get mad when he don't answer them. I don't even see attempts on Roger Goodell, because here's the problem. The reason you don't ask as a media member is because you want access. You want to stay in your position. You want to keep getting fed stories. You want the first scoop. But there's a price that comes with that. See, I'm an independent guy. I ain't never trying to work for the NFL. I do what I do here because I'm about the facts. That's my brand. My brand is about the truth and the facts. At the end of the day, I'm not status hopping. I'm not moving around. My job is talk to the people. If you take care of the people will take care of you. And at the end of the day, I am in the game because it's a checks and balance. See, they didn't put me in the game. The people put me in the game. And if the people are on your side, they can't take you nowhere. So at the end of the day, let's continue to talk about what the NFL is and what the NFL isn't. So you say, G. Bush, what is the strategy here for Deshaun Watson? Well, the first thing that we need to tear down is that the NFL has somehow gotten to a point where they are an organization that pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and their ingenuity and their great marketing and their great product got them there. No, it didn't. You know what got them there? Lobbying and tax exemptions, like every good corporation in this country. Getting stadiums off the backs of taxpayers is how they did it in this country. You see, they like to make it seem like they're getting their money off regular, but make no bones about it. The first thing Deshaun Watson and the NFL Players Association has to come to the conclusion is how deep you want to go here. How deep you want to go here. I'm sure somebody show it to them, because what I'm saying is 100% factual. How deep do you want to go here? Sometimes when the gloves are off, you have to understand both sides are going to get damaged here. Because if you damage the league, that means sometimes the players get damaged. Because if the owners ain't paying, or the owners got to pay a little bit of money on some fines, and the owner's in trouble, that's a trickle-down economic theory against the players. So first things first, they let you know when they appealed the decision and wanted to give Deshaun Watson an indefinite or year suspension, right? So you knew the gloves was off. And I ask a question. Mr. DeMaurice Smith, I see Busby out here representing his client, doing the dog and pony show, doing the perp walk. Roger Goodell, you have an opportunity still to do the right thing. You know why he's saying that, right? You got one more plaintiff. You got one more plaintiff that Deshaun Watson got to settle with. And you know what he's going to use? Well, he's going to use the fact that Sue Robinson said that he was a predator. He's going to use the fact that not only did 30 other teams sign the deal, seal, and deliver and pay the people off, he's going to point to the fact that the arbitrator says, and right now Deshaun Watson's indefinitely suspended. So when Deshaun Watson goes to court, he's going to use all of that as a reason as to why he felt that this case should be found in the direction and in the favor of his client. DeMaurice Smith, my man, shout out to you. See, I thought you would be a little more succinct, and I thought you would be more like forward facing, because you do make about $2.9 million a year off the Players Association. I've seen Busby out here. You got a client that's here fighting for the entire movement, the entire the precedent of players all around, starting now to the end of future. If you don't stop this and stand for this, what are you going to stand for? Because case point is, if the NFL is able to win this case, they can say, I'm going to indefinitely suspend every single player if they get into trouble. Tax trouble, guess what? I can suspend you indefinitely. A investigation of conduct. We already got domestic violence. We already know with sexual assault what they're gonna do with that. Any simple thing, they've now set it up where if you're in civil claims, you are an individual that can be suspended indefinitely. Back child support, jaywalking tickets, whatever the case may be. If somebody alleges you did something, you can now be suspended indefinitely. So that's what's on the line. One of the things that you might want to do is get out there and defend your client because he can't do it in an ongoing investigation. Why are you not out there talking about the same things that I'm going to talk about right here? Why are you not even out there talking about the fact that the NFL had a memo going around laughing, saying that you got big lips and just being overtly racist? You see, there's certain things that you can do. When the facts aren't on your side, you can always argue process, right? And that's what we're actually talking about here. It's not just an isolated incident. It's not about just Deshaun Watson. It's about the complete process. And in fact, we argue systematic process. Brings me to what I'm bringing to the table. The NFL Players Association has a credible and solid case for discrimination in a class action lawsuit. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I didn't get to this point if I didn't have any ammunition in my back pocket. And you're going to see about an hour worth of ammunition, round after round after round, that is not disputable. And I'm talking with this vigor. I'm talking with this excitement level because guess what? It's time out for all the talking points. Anything after today, the talking points are dead. I don't want to see people jumping on the radio, rubbing Roger Goodell's shoulders like he's the incarnate of Christ. I don't want to hear anything more about protecting a shield. You are, if anything, you're protecting a idea and a practice of racism in this country. That's what you're doing. And I said R with a very strong R. Now, you don't do that unless you got the receipts. My mom told me that. If you ain't got the receipts, you might want to fall back, but I got the receipts. Let's go ahead and talk about what a class action lawsuit constitutes of. Can we keep it going? Here we go. Employment class actions involve massive cases that sometimes involve damages that range in the millions of dollars for violating employers. A class action results when multiple employees endure the same workplace discrimination or other employment law violation and join together in a single large case against the employer. Class action lawsuits can help the victims to receive justice while also deterring future violations by the employer as well as others. So I'm just telling you what constitutes to that. Because right now, we are going to show you credibly that in their hiring practice of African-American coach, they are in breach. When it comes to interviewing and hiring new prospective clients, a la the NFL Combine, it is discriminatory in the practices and the way they go about vetting those players. 3, in its conduct policy. We're going to talk about the conduct policy and the level of collusion with Colin Kaepernick. Right? Taking a knee and he's just banished, right? You already settled that case. Also, we will get to the direct smoking gun, the CTE. They lost in court to CTE a $1 billion settlement. That settlement is to be dispersed amongst players who have brain damage because of playing the game. They have systematic racist qualifiers which prohibit and purposely limit African Americans from claiming what their fair share of that settlement is. And it's here and it's all there. Not debatable. Not debatable at all. And we'll continue to talk and highlight and juxtapose in this video the actions when white owners are involved in the actions of African-American kids, age 25, 27, they ain't young men. We won't say kids. We're going to say 20 young men who happen to be African-American. We live in two sets of systems here. It's two sets of systems for what they want to do and what they like to do. So we'll give you this last disclaimer. By the way, in the background of what we're talking about, always remember this. In the conduct policy, it reads that owners, coaches, players, league officials, referees, NFL Network employees all fall under the conduct policy. So therefore, they must treat everyone equally under that policy. If they do not, it is discrimination, and we will prove that coming up. Let's keep it going. Employment class action lawsuit. An employment class action lawsuit is a single lawsuit on behalf of numerous plaintiffs who have identical claims against a single employer. Damages are sought in single action for the entire group instead of the individual separate lawsuits. So keep in mind here, we're not even just talking about Deshaun Watson. We're talking about multiple instances throughout this whole video. So when people try to come and diffuse it and say, well, that just happened for Watson. No. That's just one part of what the systematic agenda is of the NFL. Here's the requirement of a class action lawsuit. In order for a class action lawsuit, it is important you do understand what constitutes a class action lawsuit. The legal claim must be one that isn't unique to one individual, a la Deshaun Watson, but instead negatively impacts an entire group of individuals. I'll show that entire group of individuals is a protected status in the equal opportunity in class action lawsuits, and you must abide by those specific groups, whether it's age, protected group, religion, protected group, race, protected group, ethnicity, protected group. Just so happens that 70% of the NFL happens to be African-American. So they fit the description. Number of individuals that have the grounds to file lawsuits is so great that it would be impractical to flip up a courthouse with multiple identical cases against the same employer. And just so you know, I got enough complaints. And just alone the way you distributed it and discriminated against people who had CTE looking to claim cognitive loss. 50,000 claims dropped off to a judge. So I already got enough right there to start with. Let's keep it moving. We cooking. First thing we must do is establish who and what the NFL is. Yes, it's a sports league, but more than anything, I said it was a syndicate. They are so popular that they can print money. And the reason they can print money is not because of their ingenuity about their business model, not the fact that they're forward thinking, not the fact that they have innovation. It's because they have exemptions. And now we get to antitrust. Let's keep it moving. Inside the NFL's tax exempt status, what is the league's tax status? How much is it worth, and would be the implications of the league giving up or being stripped of its tax exemption? So I'm not just giving you like, well, why would they be? Why would they be racist? Why would they do those things? The NFL is so profitable. The NFL, why would they go out and do that and willfully just violate people's civil rights if they print money? Well, they print money because the other people that they put in office gave them that exempt status. Let's keep it moving. So the National Football League, like several other professional sport organizations, enjoys some tax benefits. One of them being the NFL League office is classified as a non-profit organization. That is an oxymoron. How can you get $11 billion in revenue from televisions and you tell me you are a non-profit? You are a 501c6. That was done in 1966 in order to get the league up and moving. What else is covered by that code? Chamber of Commerce, business leagues, real estate boards, boards of trades. This was, and you looking down here, The NFL's tax exemption dates back even further than that. A struggling sports league in 1942, the league office received a tax-exempt nonprofit status from the IRS. That continued into 1966 when the American Football League, making a hard challenge to the NFL for TV contracts, college stars, and popularity amongst regular fans, the two leagues agreed to a merger in order to avoid running afoul of antitrust laws. The merger had to be approved by Congress, and that meant convincing Louisiana Senator Russell Long, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. So how did the deal get done? NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle agreed to allow a new franchise team. Guess where? Just so happened to be in the great state of New Orleans. And who headed that state? Louisiana Senator Rep. Russell Long. Once again, when I say that's a syndicate, understand this thing runs deep. You get tax exempt, you get a tax exemption for the whole league, and we agreed to give you the New Orleans Saints as your award for being a good player. Backdoor handshakes, all the above, letter D. We'll just keep moving. Don't tell me about don't tell me about how good the NFL is. The practices are so great. It's the best product moving. Okay. Let's talk about what the exemptions are for. Only a small portion of the NFL, the league office, is actually tax exempt. The teams still are subject to taxes as most of the NFL's operations through NFL Ventures and NFL properties. So function of the league office: writing and revising rules, hiring referees, negotiating labor agreements with players, conducting player safety research, operating youth programs, organizing the draft, organizing the Super Bowl. This is old. The projected revenue is $11 billion. I'm guessing it's near $18 billion now in today's money. Let's continue to go on. So, what does this mean for the teams? The NFL isn't the only pro sports league that takes advantage of the IRS rules. It's just the most lucrative. So let me just tell you about this. So Major League Baseball formerly had a tax-exempt status, but voluntarily gave it up back in 2007. And ironically, the NBA is not tax-exempt either. I just want to, maybe it's just me. The exempt leagues are the NFL, the NHL, and PGA Tour. It's quite ironic that the NHL as well as the PGA Tour are comprised of mostly all white athletes. The only one that's involved with tax exemptions that have a majority of black players is the NFL. However, there are no black owners at all. And they currently have to put in a rule so black coaches can even get an opportunity to sniff a head coaching job, even though blacks constitute 70% of their workforce and labor force. Ironically, the NBA is majority all African-American, and Major League Baseball is the majority of those individuals are Latin, black and brown people. Maybe that's a coincidence, or maybe, you could tell me, is this legal? The NFL is simply taking advantage of the IRS code pertaining to its operations. It would be difficult to make a case that the league is breaking the law, but that doesn't mean everyone agrees that the league's tax-exempt status is truly on that level. Now, if you talk about what's the argument against it, it's that the league office is not an organization because it does not advocate on the behalf of professional football in general, but rather the NFL itself. The NFL isn't an open league. After all, you can't just start a team and join the NFL. I mean, how are you going to say the National Football League office is a trade organization? They're not. They're not a trade organization. They're a group of 32 owners. And like they said, they perfectly put it, you can't just join the NFL. You got to get a majority of the voters to hold that thing. And on top of that, you got to have taxpayer money to open up a state-of-the-art stadium on your dime. So the league just on your dime, right? And let's talk about some of these so-called stadiums. This is old information. Not only does the NFL have tax advantages thanks to the IRS, it has also been the beneficiary of publicly funded stadiums in dozens of cities. Here's a look at some of the recent expensive projects, including the under construction Viking Stadium, which of course is done now, right? Amount the public finance for Lucas Oil Stadium, $619 million. Viking Stadium, $506 million. AT&T Stadium, Jerry's World in Dallas, $444 million. Paul Brown Tiger Stadium, $424 million. Now, here's the problem. We talk about we got to cut Medicaid. We got to cut Social Security. We got to cut Medicare. We got to cut social programs. Yet and still, African American and minorities help foot the bill for these stadiums while they don't fully get an opportunity to participate wholly and equally inside the organization of the NFL. I say that's ridiculous. Why am I paying taxes just for people that look like me to get discriminated and they make their pockets fatter? I don't get tax breaks, but they do. And the politicians come to your state and tell you why it's a good idea. They come to you and say, whatever, hey, listen, it's gonna bring so many jobs. Really? Last time I checked, it was hard for people of certain colors to get those jobs. I digress. Let's keep it moving. So you say right now, G. Bush, where is this going? Well, I'm showing you where it's going. If I'm going to have a class action lawsuit, what discrimination clause am I going to get? Because applicants, employees, or former employees are protected under employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, right? So obviously it's race, right? So you're like, man, I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing yet. He's reaching right now. He hasn't given me any examples of race. He just said the NFL is making money because of Congress. Who cares about that, G. Bush? That's how corporate America works. I get you. I'm just proving a point. I'm just showing you that when they tell you all this nice, fluffy stuff, it ain't it. Let's get down to the meat and potatoes. Here we go. This is just from a couple days ago. If you don't know about the Flores case, we'll read a little bit about it. They are actually in the process of adjudicating a discrimination lawsuit against against the NFL on behalf of Flores, who is suing under discrimination. So this reads, the U.S. District Judge presiding over the Brian Flores versus NFL case denied the Flores team request to take discovery on the NFL's request to move this case into arbitration. The next briefs on both sides are due later this month, with the judge decisions to be expected afterwards. And this is by Flores' lawyers. Now, mind you, what he's talking about in discovery is one of the key points of why you want discovery is because it gives you insight into why, how, when, what, where the NFL was colluding, emailing, and what evidence that they have in that case. And the judge in this case says, we're not going to allow discovery because we're going to make you go to arbitration. Now, what I want to show and prove here is watch how arbitration is used by the NFL. If you think about it, arbitration is the rigged way where cases against the NFL for egregious actions go to die. So Flores' lawyer says, we are confident that we will defeat the efforts of the NFL to move this matter into a private and confidential arbitration behind closed doors. It is obvious that the NFL is trying to hide behind the arbitration process and avoid public scrutiny of racial discrimination and retaliation claims we have brought. If they are confident in their defenses, they should let the process play out in the court so the general public can see. This is a hallmark of what the NFL does. They just did it to Deshaun Watson. They moved the case to arbitration, which is collectively bargained, and then use the fact that that information is not going to be in the public sphere. That information in the discovery process will not be there. So then when Sue Robinson says, well, I think he was a predator, you never get a chance to see what she saw that came to that conclusion. In this case, they've done it 2 other times when it came to discrimination cases. One is here in the Flores case. The second is in the Colin Kaepernick case for collusion for taking a kneel and to racial injustice on American flag. This is what they do. Arbitration is rigged in the favor of the NFL, and they do it in a way that they just don't want it to get out, that they've been doing this underhanded racist tendency stuff for over 30 years. I'm just showing you it's not about one person, it's the process. And that's what you need for a class action lawsuit. Let's move along. When you take a look at what Flores is saying, Flores sued the NFL along with the Dolphins, Denver Broncos, and New York Giants in February, alleging that he was the victim of racial discrimination. The 41-year-old saw he received what amounted to a token interview with the Broncos and Giants during the hiring process. That's when he found out it was token because Bill Belichick accidentally text messaged him. He text messaged the wrong Brian. And he congratulated Flores on accident of the job that he was getting. The only problem was Flores was really confused when he saw the text because he hadn't even interviewed yet. Turns out that the Brian he was supposed to send it to had already received the job. This was all a formality, a sham, a ruse. The Rooney Rule for equality and hiring African-American candidates is a joke. They already know what they're going to do beforehand. You continue on. He also alleged the Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, offered him $100,000 for every loss that the team had in 2019 because the franchise wanted to get the best draft pick possible. Now, let's see what the league said against that. The league is always investigating. It's about protecting the shield. It's about making sure, right? Making sure that nothing is messing up with the sanctity and the clean image. Get up out of here. I'm trying to hear that. Let's continue. The league did an investigation. I would like to see the discovery on that as well. I want to see how good the investigation was. I want to see how long it was. I want to see the entire process. The NFL recently concluded an independent investigation. Sure, it was independent. You guys have a problem bringing anything fair. you look at everything, right? So you pick the person and say it was above board. I'm sure that's the way justice works for a lot of people. The NFL recently concluded an independent investigation into the Dolphins and found the organization violated league policies regarding the integrity of the game. So they just told you they admit guilt, but they do it and nobody says anything. That's because there's a lack of diversity in the people that are supposed to report what the truth is. The announcement included a pair of seemingly contradicting findings. The Dolphins did not intentionally lose games during the 2019 season, the league said, nor did anyone at the club, including Mr. Ross, instruct Coach Flores to do so. However, Ross did, in fact, emphasize draft position over Miami's on the field record. And that's not hearsay, because what I do is I just go over here and it's a thing called the internet. I want to see if he said it or not. Well, lo and behold, there it goes. Right there. So it's front row and center. This is Mr. This is the owner of the Dolphins. He said, on a number of occasions during the 2019 season, Mr. Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, expressed his belief that the Dolphins' position in the upcoming 2020 draft should take priority over the team's win-loss record. These comments were made frequently to team president and CEO Tom Garfinkel, but were also made to general manager Chris Greer, senior vice president Brandon Shore, and coach Flores. See, I'm confused. Did anybody bring this up? I guess, right? Some question the logic behind dismissing the intent of Ross's comment behind the scenes. Andrew Brent says, wait, so the NFL found Stephen Ross did say something on Flores about paying him $100,000 per game to lose, but it was not intended to be a serious offer. Of course, owners joke about that kind of thing in their coaches all the time. No, they don't. Once again, it's right there for people to see. Let's go to Pro Football Talk. The idea that the employees of Stephen Ross didn't take seriously his repeated comments about 2020 draft position being more important than 2019 win-loss record is laughable. One of the benefits of being a multi-billionaire is not having to expressly order the code red. Who ordered the code red? This is just fascinating stuff. Fascinating. So now we talked about hiring practices, which we've seen what it is. Let's go ahead and move along to the smoking gun. Let's talk about Kaepernick a little bit. So this will paint the picture very quickly for the collusion case of Eric Reed and Colin Kaepernick, and it raises all of the smoking gun questions right here. I mean, this is a slam dunk case. So when we talking about now, we talk about punishments and the unwritten rule and the nature of how corrupt the NFL is. Like I said, I would call them, a crime syndicate, but at the end of the day, that's a little harsh. So I'm gonna just call them a regular syndicate because, as you can tell, they all about making sure things go away. So what exactly were Colin Kaepernick and Reed claiming? Kaepernick first filed a grievance in October 27, saying NFL teams were in violation of the anti-collusion clause of the collective bargaining agreement. In the grievance, Kaepernick's attorneys claimed he had gone unsigned because the NFL and his owners colluded to deprive Mr. Kaepernick of employment rights in retaliation for Mr. Kaepernick's leadership and advocacy for equality and social justice for African Americans, and his bringing awareness to the peculiar institutions still undermining racial equality in the United States. This is all here. I don't have to play no race card when they just play the race deck. It's here. All you got to do is look at it. It's right here. We're going to get rid of these talking points today. Y'all going, boy, let's go back here. But this is going on for years. Why would either side settle now? Well, let's talk about it. The case was about to reach a new level. Arbitrator Stephen Burbank was going to conduct a hearing to begin resolving the issue, probably in early this spring. That would have forced both sides into a semi-public airing of grievances that could have exposed the inner workings of the league's business, along with details of depositions attorneys have taken with high-level executives and some owners. So the owners had been under deposition. They had gave statements, right? So let's continue on to see where this leads, right? So did the NFL think it would lose, or did it not, or did it want to avoid discovery? The latter, most likely, which means they wanted to avoid discovery. It is also likely the NFL viewed a settlement as an important milestone in moving past the controversy that drew the ire of President Donald Trump, among others. But the facts are eye-opening. Kaepernick began taking a knee during the national anthem in 2016 to protect police brutality and systematic racism. In a league that is in perpetual need of quarterback depth, Kaepernick isn't known to have received a single firm contract offer since he parted ways with the San Francisco 49ers in May of 2017. It sure seems suspicious. Of course, the CBA explicitly says the lack of opportunity cannot itself be evidence of collusion. So think about how airtight that is. The CBA states explicitly the lack of opportunity cannot in itself be evidence of collusion. From the CBA, the failure by a club or clubs to negotiate, to submit offer sheets, or to sign contracts with restricted free agents or transition players, or to negotiate, make offers, or sign contracts for the playing services of such players or unrestricted free agents shall not by in itself or in combination only with evidence about playing skills of other players not receiving any such offer or contract satisfying the burden of proof set forth. Basically saying, just because they didn't hire you don't mean we was colluding. We could have thought you was garbage. Maybe we just didn't want to hire you. Maybe you wasn't no good. But this is what really catches them in a bind, right? This is what real gets them. Then what did Kaepernick and Reed need to do to win? They needed to show that a club, its employees or agents had entered into an agreement to restrict or limit whether to offer a contract, according to CBA. In other words, they needed a smoking gun, something league officials could have easily have avoided, even if they didn't engage in a conspiracy to keep Kaepernick and later Reed out of the league. Point blank, period. The only way the NFL would have ever signed or needed to sign is if they had information, documentation, text messages, emails, phone records of individuals that were on the record caught red-handed agreeing that nobody was going to pick Colin Kaepernick up. And that's the only reason he was able to win his settlement. Again, we continue to go. I'll repeat it afterwards. It's not about Deshaun Watson. It's about systematic discrimination. Deshaun Watson is one individual. We're showing a pattern of behavior that has happened consistently over and over and over again, and it permeates every process of the NFL. Hiring, discipline, will continue to go on. Let's talk about how they recruit their new players. Can we do that real quick? How they go about talking to college kids, how they go about interviewing new prospective employees in their league. Okay, let's talk about this behavior of how you interview prospective or future employees. Scouting combine, to me, is probably one of the most egregious things that sets up a blatant level of discrimination and just bigotry overall, and just this impunity at the way that they feel like because you got good ratings, you can degrade people. Because you're gonna give somebody a lot of money, you can degrade people. Because you given an opportunity, you can go ahead and do what you want and how you want to go with it. Like the fact that these practices have gone on for so long is the reason why this video is coming about right now. I'm tired of it. I'm sorry. I'm tired of hearing these dudes clutch pearls in the media and not say nothing about none of this. I'm sorry, man. But the demonization of athletes, but the deification of owners has got to stop. Now, let me ask you, in the context of reading this, when we get to it, you tell me at what other job, what other organization, what other line of work could you even utter these sickening words? But they do it under the premise of we're vetting. If you can't vet based on tape, athletic ability, and your scouting, then you got to stick clear of all this extra stuff because you can do it just because you can. And that's the thing that I'm railing against. No, NFL, you can't treat people poorly, be fraudulent, and do what you want because you got good ratings and I like watching football. That's unacceptable. These are combine questions asked that would be illegal in every company. Now you ask yourself, don't talk about just you gotta it's bad when you do stuff to women. You can't, we respect all women. Sure you do. When you ask questions like this and you disrespect people's family members, this is questionings to prospective clients and prospective employees. When did you lose your virginity? So do you like men? Do you find your mother attractive? Is your mother a prostitute? Would you use a gun or a knife to murder someone? Do you have both testicles? This is real life, people. Don't tell me about disrespecting and public outcry. Y'all got public outcry except when it comes to this type of behavior. And you sit back and deify these dudes like they can't do no wrong. Let's get to, these are just a small sampling of the questions asked over the past several years at the NFL Scouting Combine by team representatives to potential draftees, the latter of which was asked at this year's Combine to former University of Texas cornerback Chris Boyd. To his credit, Boyd answered, yes. I don't know why you got to ask. That's the question. What do they have to ask? Or why do they have to ask? On its surface, these are seemingly strange questions to ask during an extensive job interview process. You certainly couldn't ask questions like that in the private sector to a prospective employee without facing a lawsuit. But most people chalk up this bizarre line of questioning up as the culture and nature of football in the NFL. The league's most ardent defenders will tell you owners are investing millions of dollars into their potential future employees. They need to discern how well these guys think on their feet. These outside the box questions will give teams a much bigger insight as possible into the character and makeup of these players. Are we serious? This line of questioning has been asked for years, yet the NFL still has issues with player conduct off the field. What are all these smart men in the front office doing with the information that they gather from these intensive sessions? It's not. It's here to emasculate you. It's here to set a tone. It's here to say you ain't worth nothing. It's here to say you come from a certain area and you ain't worth the pennies I'm putting in your pocket. You better be happy that you can even get this off. Because if not, we have you back in the street in your hood, gang banging. That's what the tone is. The fact that you think it's cool, you can talk about somebody's mother. is your mother a prostitute? They operate like this and then be mad if somebody punch them in the mouth, because that's what will happen in the street. But since you inside, don't tell me about what Deshaun Watson did is unprofessional and over the top when you consistently make these types of errors all the time, and yet and still you cool with it. You cool with it. And half the people that's commentating on it is cool with it because they say it all the time. We don't care. Let's talk about this. There's something about 20-something-year-old black males being asked these questions by primarily white males who control their future earning potential that just doesn't sit right. If it doesn't bother you, it should. What exactly are we doing by essentially ignoring these types of behavior and allowing the NFL to conduct this business in this manner? Why are they allowed to get away with this behavior? Come on now. I'm not even gonna read the rest. Y'all can pause the video and it'll be there for you to read, because it pisses me off just looking at it. Asking these stupid questions. This is another part. So just go ahead and see what we've talked about. We have already hiring practices discrimination. We already have punishment discrimination and collusion. Now we turn over and look to your hiring practices of your employees and the way you conduct your interviews. It's not refutable, people. Continue. And this is the biggest part of it all. This is huge right here. And I don't want to understate how big this is. The league also discriminates when it comes to financial equity under practice, under the CBA, and under a court-appointed award of $1 billion. And watch how they systematically continue to try to discriminate against Black people and African Americans who have put their body on the line, who are injured, who have dementia, who now have Alzheimer's, need 24-hour care. And this is the type of stuff that they do. And you want to sit up there and tell me about protecting the shield. You're protecting racism. That's what you're doing. The NFL on Wednesday pledged to halt the use of racial norming, which assumed Black players start out with lower cognitive function. You don't have critical thinking like white people. You're less intelligent than white people. You're not able to articulate like white people. You're not as sharp as white people. You're not as hardworking as white individuals. In the $1 billion settlement of brain injury claims and review past scores for any potential race bias, the practice made it harder for Black retirees to show a deficit and qualify for an award. The standards were created in the 1990s in hopes of offering more appropriate treatment to dementia patients, but critics faulted the way that they used it to determine payouts in the NFL concussion case. There's a lot of things that happened in the 90s. It's systematic. We have the 3-strike rule, where people were incarcerated for non-violent crimes and put in jail for exorbitant amounts of time for non-violent crimes. It's a lot of things that happened in the 80s and 90s. And these type of policies have been punitive to African Americans across the board. Wednesday announcement comes after a pair of Black players filed a civil rights lawsuit over the practice. Now, have you noticed? All of these cases have already been filed. It's not like I'm coming up with something new. They're already being sued for discrimination on multiple points, multiple areas. Black players filed a civil lawsuit over the practice. Medical expert raised concerns, and a group of NFL families last month dropped 50,000 petitions at the federal courthouse in Philadelphia. So if you're wondering about the criteria of how many you need for a class action lawsuit, I got 50,000 petitions already. Still don't think I got a case? Where the lawsuits had been thrown out by a judge overseeing the settlement. Funny how every time the NFL go to court, they just win. They make up the rules, they just win. Keep in mind, the NFL spends $100 to $200 million a year in just lobbying Congress. I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would if you backing judges' campaigns. I'm sure you would if you donating to the party. I'm not surprised he threw it out. But senior U.S. District Judge Anita B. Brody, African-American woman, took the unusual step of asking for a report on the issue, AKA, we ain't sending you to arbitration. I want a report on what you did now, because we already know arbitration is where the NFL sends legislation, agreements to die under their faulty practices. She asked for the report. Black retirees hope it will include a breakdown of the nearly $800 million in payouts so far by race. I'm not saying nothing that they don't already have in court. All it takes is a little collaboration between all of the people that have been incorrectly, wrongfully defrauded and discriminated by the NFL. The fear that the data will never come to light. I wonder why. Because nobody would report on this, but they sure report on how many women. 66 massages, G. Bush. 66 massages. What about 50,000 petitions in federal court alleging discrimination? But then why would you care about discrimination? Doesn't affect you. Don't work for you, right? Especially if you, hey, I don't see any, I don't see any discrimination. Well, it's going to be hard for you to put that in the comment section on this one, because this is a smoking gun right here. Let's describe it a little more so we can get super airtight on this thing. So I don't want no problems of people jumping in my comments talking about, well, it's not necessarily apples to apples, oranges to oranges. See, what they did was different than what you did, G. Bush. And I know it just seems different, but sometimes why does it always have to be what the race card? Because it is when it is. The binary race norms, when they use in testing, assumes that Black patients start with worse cognitive function than whites and other non-Blacks. This makes it harder for them to show a deficit and qualify for an award. Henry and Davenport, for instance, were denied awards, but would have qualified had they been white, according to their lawsuit, which Brody dismissed in March, calling it improper collateral attack on the settlement. They have appealed the ruling. More than 2,000 NFL retirees have filed dementia claims, but fewer than 600 have received awards, according to the most recent report. More than half of all NFL retirees are Black, according to the lawyers involved in the litigation. The worst awards so far have averaged $516,000 for the 379 players with early stage dementia and $715,000 for 207 players with moderate dementia. Retirees can seek payouts for Alzheimer's disease and a few other diagnoses. The settlement ended thousands of lawsuits. How many do you need for a class action lawsuit? I think thousands would qualify. Ended thousands of lawsuits that accused the NFL of a long hiding what it knew about the link between concussions and traumatic brain injury. Stop sitting around acting like these folks are somehow holier art thou, because we're not going to play that game. I think that I have a pretty solid case, and now I'm going to give you my closing arguments. Now let's get back to, we're going to get down to my closing arguments. And this will set up everything. It will bring everything and tie everything together. And it just basically shows you in real time exactly how they treat owners, how they treat other races other than African Americans. And it's just here. Let's go ahead and talk about it. And we're going to bring this thing home. Now, this is an article that was in USA Today. And this article was written by an individual who talked about the exact same thing that we're doing here today. And I thought it did an awesome job of encapsulating and really surmising the whole way that I've been feeling and multiple people have felt from Jump Street when it comes to the arrogance, hypocrisy, corruption, and just overall blatant disregard for the truth, blatant disregard for fairness, and blatant disregards for any sort of checks and balances. It goes on to read, now we'll see just how committed NFL Roger Goodell is really to protecting the shield. Remember, throughout this whole thing, this is a theme. Protecting the shield means protecting the syndicate. Protecting the shield means at all costs, we will make sure we get rid of what we need to do, and we will always be in power. They are quick to hammer players who run afoul of the law or put themselves in situations that embarrass the good name of the NFL. You never had a good name. I've been on here an hour. You ain't had no good name. Goodwill. Really? That's what we worried about? And I wish people stop regurgitating that crap. They are quick to hammer players who run afoul of the law or put themselves in situations that embarrass the good name of the NFL. Goodell is now faced with one of his own doing the very same thing. Jeff Pash, the NFL's general counselor, by the way, is part of the collective bargaining agreement. He too is subject to the federal to the collective bargaining agreement, and he is held just to the same standard as players, owners, and coaches. It is simply stated. So when I go to court, I'm going to show you and prove the way they look at African American players and minorities and the way they look at their own. The NFL's general counselor might not have done anything illegal, but a report late last Thursday by the New York Times about some of its emails certainly has brought shame to the league. Now, remember, we hear it all the time. G. Bush, it don't matter. It doesn't matter if Deshaun Watson he got indicted or they brought a case in Texas. It doesn't matter. It just matters that it's probably that he did those things. Okay, well, let me go ahead and apply the same doggone thing right here. According to the Times, Pash mocked the NFL's diversity hiring efforts. It's all right here. The racism is blatant. And the next time you hear them talking points, point them to this video. Because anybody that want to deflect, that want to dodge, they condone it. Because what they telling you is they don't give a damn either. If it don't affect me, why I care about some minorities getting discriminated against that's richer than me, that got money. It's not about that. It's about the fair and equitable practices and the discriminatory nature of what permeates the entire systematic process in the NFL. He's the general counsel, and he mocked the NFL's diversity hire efforts and was sympathetic to Washington football team's defense of his previous racist nickname. He also appeared to show favoritism to the Washington football team and its former president, Bruce Allen. That chummy relationship is sure to raise additional questions about the NFL's leniency and lack of transparency following an investigation into the toxic, misogynistic workplace of the Washington football team. Was it Pash who told investigator Beth Wilkinson to make a series of oral reports rather than the issue of a written report? They just trying to get rid of the paper trail. Why would you tell somebody to give an oral report that is thousands of page longs potentially, with no recollection, with no notes, and you think that she's going to be able to capture the full extent of what her investigation held, and you wanted to do an oral report? What kind of kangaroo backwards stuff that we deal with, man? And why is an independent investigator, Beth Wilkinson, reporting to the league's top legal representation? How is that fair, equitable, and impartial? It's not. At every time that we look at any investigation, count how many times the team makes sure that they have their boy, their person, their representative over a process that is guaranteed to give the NFL the win. That's not hypocrisy. It's illegal. That's not a double standard. It's called breach of contract. How much influence did Pash have over the decision to fine Washington's owner, Dan Snyder, $10 million, which initially appears to be a significant figure if you actually the equivalent of the pocket change for someone whose net worth in Forbes has an estimated worth of $4 billion. But yet and still, you're talking about Deshaun Watson, $260 million. He's not worth that. You got a problem with everybody making money except for, we get it. And you want unprecedented. Mind you, they call for unprecedented punishment of Deshaun Watson, and have also paid Colin Kaepernick off because they already know that they're admitting that, yes, we colluded against him. Yet and still, they pay the money and keep moving on with life. But you want me to reinstate and reapply with this syndicate of crooks? Y'all done lost your mind. And I hope every single radio, television, opinion host, writer looks at this. And every time they start saying that dumb stuff, you send them this link and say, read it. $10 million. He a billionaire. The NFL also didn't strip Washington of any draft picks, a punishment with that potential for far, far more impact. Once again, double standards. A standard for what he's doing, different. When he calls to other people, totally different. And given these were just a handful of the 650,000 emails that Wilkinson and her team turned over to the NFL earlier this year, what else is in there? Might the thought of opposing attorneys combining through Pash's correspondence be the reason that the NFL was willing to settle Colin Kaepernick and Ed Reed's collusion case and lawsuit? I'm not the first person to come up with this. This writer already saw what it was. These are all fair questions to ask, and try as the NFL will to insist there's nothing to see here, they will be asked. And you wonder why Dan Snyder, when he was forced to report to this and attest to this and speak to this, he got on his yacht and went to Europe for about 2 months and ducked the subpoena by Congress. Tell me about the shield. Jeff Pash is a respected and high character NFL executive. Jeff Miller, the NFL's executive vice president of communication, told the Times, we ain't trying to hear none of that from you. Don't tell me about your colleague. Any effort to portray these emails as inappropriate is either misleading or patently false. I could have swore a lot of people got mad on Deshaun Watson when he patently said the allegations were false. And every day I turn the TV on, somebody, well, I would feel much better if he just admitted to it. I feel much better about life if he would just fess up. Where was you talking about fess up to this? You went nowhere. Spare me the self-righteous indignation. It was appalling enough to see that the casual racism, misogyny, homophobia, and bigotry in John Gruden's emails, which cost him his job, by the way, at the NFL's behest. If you look carefully at the comment by Las Vegas Raiders owner Mark Davis, and guess what? John Gruden is suing the NFL for wrongful termination. In that suit, he has the ability to drop a bomb on all of those doggone emails. I would like to see those 650,000 emails. I mean, do you think nobody else said anything given the length of racist language Gruden showed? Not one slur in there? Stop. You believe it if you want. Believe it if you want. Finally, we've always known the NFL owners are the adult equivalent of a frat house, with few exceptions. It's a bunch of wealthy old white men who view themselves as superior to anyone who doesn't look like them or run in their circles. Gruden might not have been an owner, but he was one of them. A Super Bowl winning coach with similar attitudes and an inflated view of himself. The league office, however, is supposed to be different. Or at least Goodell has tried to spin it as such, claiming to be pained at the lack of diversity in coaching and general management ranks and preaching tolerance and inclusion. What do these slogans in the end say? End racism, and it takes all of us. Apparently, Pash didn't get that memo. When Allen shared an audio file of a team song aimed at attracting Latino fans, the Time reported, Pash responded, I'm not sure this song will be as popular after the wall gets built. It's all there. It's all there. He also sympathized with Allen's gripe about hiring Jocelyn Moore, who became the first Black woman to be the NFL's top spokesperson. Is it a coincidence? Don't tell me I'm playing a race card. The race deck has been here. Every single supporting document that I pulled up, it ain't no wiggle room in it. Zero. And finally, we'll check the tone of Mr. Roger Goodell when he's talking about his buddies and talking about a player. This is kind of small. I'll read the best I can. Commissioner, this sound familiar? Sounds like this could have just doggone been the same thing he told Sue Robinson. Any coincidence? Commissioner Goodell said, I want to thank Beth Wilkinson and her team for conducting a thorough and independent review of the Washington Club's workplace, culture, and conduct, and providing the club and me with a series of thoughtful recommendations based on her findings. Beth and her team performed their work in a highly professional and ethical manner. Most importantly, I want to thank the current and former employees who spoke to Beth and her team. They provided a vital information that will help ensure the workplace environment at the clubs continue to improve. It's incredibly difficult to relive painful memories. I am grateful to everyone who courageously came forward. All right. Let's see what his findings. Based on Wilkinson's review, the commissioner concluded that for many years, the workplace environment at Washington football team, both generally and particularly for women, was highly unprofessional. Bullying and intimidating frequently took place and described the culture as one of fear. And numerous female employees reported having experienced sexual harassment and a general lack of respect in the workplace. That is what Roger Goodell said. This is his words, not mine. He just admitted it. Ownership and senior management paid little or no attention to these issues. In some instances, senior executives engaged in inappropriate conduct themselves. He just admitted it. Stop telling me what you found on Watson, including use of demeaning language and public embarrassment. This set the tone for the organization and let key executives believing that disrespectful behavior and more serious misconduct was acceptable in the workplace. His words, not mine. The problems were compounded by inadequate HR staff and practices and the absence of effectively, consistently administrative process for reporting or addressing employee complaints. What is this? Is this some hole-in-the-wall restaurant with 2 employees that got these issues? No, this is a multi-billion-dollar company that gets tax exemption, that gets money printed, and that is one of the top future companies in the entire world. But you telling me inadequate process in HR. And also, they got a problem with whistleblowers. The problems were compounded by inadequate HR and practices and the absence of effectively and consistently administrated process for reporting or addressing employee complaints, as well as a widely reported fear of retaliation. These dudes, I said that I wasn't going to call them a crime syndicate, but I don't know what kind of syndicate says I'm retaliating. What, you got owners talking about people fearing retaliation? When the reports were made, they were generally not investigated and led to no meaningful discipline or other response. Because across the board, you continue to do it. You've never had a response. You've never had any answers, and you've never even attempted to fix them. Dan Snyder has acknowledged that as a club's owner, he's responsible for the culture. Owners are obligated to set an appropriate tone and establish appropriate standards, develop and implement appropriate policies, including a policy of non-retaliation, ensure that there is a proper training and compliance of record keeping, invest in employee-related systems and infrastructure, instill an ethic of respect at the club. This did not occur at the Washington club for far too long. And Dan has acknowledged his responsibility for that failure. His words, not mine. In conclusion, this case is doing two things. In all likelihood, will anybody present the information that I just presented? Probably not. Because you know that people aren't willing to truly call out racism. They just prefer not to acknowledge it and understand it as a part of life. This exercise was for the people. This exercise was for the public. This exercise is for every minority out here who can never hold power to account for anything they do. They tell you over and over again about equality. They tell you over and over again that it's equal and that we're looking to have equal outcomes. Stop lying to me. I'd rather you just treat me badly and let me understand that that's what time the game is. But stop coming out here with all of these, I'm going to breast cancer awareness and salute the troops and unity through diversity. Please save me all of that. Because it's not your rhetoric that gives you away. It is your blatant discrimination, your blatant arrogance, and your blatant disregard for the law. And this is more of a subject that is aimed to every single person who done did this for 5 months. If you want to talk about making things right, start with some of this stuff that I named. If you want to start with figuring out what Deshaun Washington should get, start off by listening to multiple allegations of systematic racism throughout the NFL and its practices. But I know too well that probably won't happen either. Because of the media, 90% of print media, 90% of on-air talent, 90% of print journals, 90% of editors are middle to older age white males. So for a minority being in the game, I don't expect someone to jump up and raise their hand and say, hey guys, what about the stuff we're doing over here? Because guess what? It don't affect them. You can never truly understand racism until you stand in them shoes. Because if you did, you would never say, yeah, I know it's messed up, but it is what it is. And this is for all the people out there that you tired of hearing that stuff. You tired of hearing the soapbox, moral soapbox jousting. Keep this for your records. You'll need to use it from time to time because it shows you from top to bottom, the NFL is racist, was racist, and if something don't change, it will always be racist. And with that being said, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want the real, if you want the uncut, and you want somebody that's going to sit in this chair and give you both sides like I did with the owners and another side with the players, real recognize real. You can donate on Cash App at $GBush91. You could donate on Cash App $GBush91. And for all my people out there that have been done wrong, hold your head and keep fighting. Because at the end of the day, you got to be smart enough to know how you move, smart enough to know how you fight, and smart enough to know how to disarm people that use talking points. And this one's for you.